My name is Rachel Carter, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married to my husband, Ethan, for 3 years. When I first met Ethan, he seemed like the perfect partner, kind, loving, and supportive. Little did I know, his family would become the real challenge in my life. From the day I married Ethan, his mother, Linda, and his sister, Monica, made it clear that I wasn't welcome. They acted like I wasn't good enough for their family. Linda controlled the household, and Monica was her shadow, always whispering in her ear about how I didn't belong. At first, I ignored their rude comments and constant interference. I loved Ethan, and I thought things would get better with time. But they didn't. Linda and Monica were always finding reasons to make me feel small. If I cooked dinner, Linda would say it wasn't good enough. If I cleaned the house, Monica would point out some imaginary flaw. It was exhausting, but I stayed quiet for the sake of my marriage. What they didn't know was that I was paying for nearly everything. I covered most of the bills, rent, groceries, utilities, because Ethan's income was barely enough to get by. I never told them because I didn't want to embarrass Ethan. But their ungrateful attitude made it harder and harder to stay silent. One evening, the breaking point finally came. Monica had visited for dinner, as usual, and the two of them were sitting on the couch gossiping. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after cooking a meal neither of them appreciated. That's when I heard Monica say something that made my heart sink. "You should just tell her to leave, Mom. She's only here because she wants Ethan's money," Monica said with a cruel laugh. Linda chimed in, "You're right. She's nothing but a freeloader. Ethan would be better off without her." I froze, my hands gripping the sink. I wanted to march into the living room and tell them the truth, that I was the one keeping this family afloat. But I didn't. Instead, I finished cleaning up and went to bed, hoping Ethan would stand up for me someday. The next morning, Linda made her move. While Ethan was at work, she confronted me in the kitchen. "Rachel," she said coldly, "it's time for you to leave. You're not a good fit for this family." I was stunned. "What are you talking about? I've done nothing but try to help this family." Linda smirked. "Help? By taking advantage of my son? Don't play innocent. Monica and I have been discussing this, and we've decided it's best if you leave." I felt anger rise in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "You have no idea what I've done for this family. If I leave, you'll find out soon enough." Her face hardened. "Is that a threat?" "No," I replied, grabbing my purse. "It's the truth." Without another word, I walked out of the house, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't believe I had been pushed out of my own home by the very people I had been supporting. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. I stood on the street outside the house, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and sadness. My mind raced. Where would I go? I couldn't turn to my own family. They lived far away, and I hadn't told them about the struggles I'd been facing. I decided to stay in a small motel for a while and figure things out. Over the next few days, I focused on myself. I found a small apartment and started to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. I no longer had to endure Linda's constant criticism or Monica's sneers. I also had more money, since I wasn't paying for their expenses anymore. Then, about 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I hesitated before answering. "Rachel," he began, his voice unsure. "How are you?" I kept my tone neutral. "I'm fine. What do you want, Ethan?" He sighed. "Look, I had no idea my mom was going to ask you to leave. I didn't even know until I got home that night." "Really?" I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "You didn't know your mother and sister were planning this?" "That's hard to believe, Ethan." "I swear I didn't," he said, sounding desperate. "But that's not why I called. Mom's in trouble." I frowned. "What kind of troubles?" "She found out that you were the one paying most of the bills," he admitted quietly. "She didn't believe me at first, but when the overdue notices started piling up, she realized. Now, she's asking me to call you." I let out a bitter laugh. "So, let me get this straight. Your mother pushed me out of the house because she thought I was a freeloader, and now that she knows the truth, she wants me back to save her?" "It's not like that," Ethan pleaded. We just need a little help until I can figure things out. I felt a wave of anger. Ethan, I sacrificed so much for your family, and all I got in return was disrespect. Your mother and sister treated me like garbage. Why would I ever want to go back to that? He was silent for a moment. Then he said, Rachel, I know we've made mistakes. I know my mom and Monica were unfair to you. But we're in a tough spot right now, and I cut him off. I'm sorry, Ethan. But your tough spot isn't my responsibility anymore. I gave everything I had to your family, and it wasn't enough for you. Now, I'm giving that effort to myself. Before he could respond, I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking, but I felt a sense of relief. For the first time, I stood up for myself without worrying about what anyone else thought. After hanging up on Ethan, I sat quietly, staring out the window of my small but cozy apartment. I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger at the audacity of his call, sadness over the end of my marriage, but most of all, pride. I had finally chosen myself. The next few weeks passed quickly. I threw myself into my work and started picking up freelance projects that brought in extra income. Slowly but surely, I was building a life I could call my own. I didn't hear from Ethan again, which was both a relief and confirmation that he wasn't willing to fight for me, just his convenience. One day, as I was checking my emails, an unknown number called. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rachel, it's Linda, came the sharp voice of my former mother-in-law. I sighed. What do you want, Linda? Well, I think we need to talk, she said, her tone softening in an uncharacteristic way. It's about Ethan. I was skeptical. What about him? He's been struggling. Things haven't been the same since you left, she said, her voice trembling. We didn't realize how much you did for us. I just want to say I'm sorry for how I treated you. Her words caught me off guard. Linda had always been proud and never admitted fault. I appreciate the apology, I said cautiously. But I'm not sure what you expect from me. We need your help, she admitted. The bills are piling up and Ethan can't handle it alone. Monica has her own problems and can't pitch in. We're drowning, Rachel. The audacity of her request stunned me. Linda, let me be clear. When I was in that house, I gave everything I had emotionally, physically, and financially. You threw me out without a second thought. And now, after realizing the mess you've made, you want me to come back and clean it up? Rachel, please, she begged. We made a mistake. You've always been so strong. We need someone like you to help us. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Linda, I understand you're in a difficult situation, but it's not my responsibility anymore. You made it clear I wasn't part of your family. I've moved on, and you should too. Her voice cracked. So that's it? You're just going to abandon us? I didn't abandon anyone, I said firmly. I was pushed out. And now I'm choosing to stay out. I ended the call and blocked the number. My hands were steady this time, my heart calm. I knew I had made the right choice. A few months later, I received a postcard from a mutual friend who still spoke to Ethan. It was brief but revealing. Ethan had moved back in with Monica, who was now facing financial troubles of her own. Linda had sold the house to pay off some debts and was living in a small apartment. It seemed they had finally been forced to face the consequences of their actions. As for me, life was better than ever. I had started my own business, a small marketing agency, and it was thriving. I also reconnected with old friends and built a support system that reminded me of my worth. I didn't need anyone's validation, least of all from people who never valued me in the first place. One evening, as I sipped tea on my balcony, I thought about Linda's words. We need someone like you to help us. I smiled to myself. They were right, I was strong. But I wasn't their solution anymore. I was my own. After hanging up on Linda, I felt an incredible sense of clarity. It was as if a weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. Their struggles were no longer my burden. For once, I was free to focus entirely on myself. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the world move on without the chaos that Linda, Monica, and Ethan had brought into my life. As I reflected on the past few years, a realization hit me. My kindness had been mistaken for weakness, my generosity for obligation. But now, I had the power to choose who deserved my efforts, and they weren't on the list. With newfound energy, I threw myself into my work. My marketing agency, which had started as a side hustle, began gaining traction. I signed several new clients, and word of mouth spread quickly. By the end of the month, I was earning more than I ever had while living with Ethan and his family. But my success wasn't just financial. I also focused on rebuilding relationships with friends I had drifted away from during my marriage. One of those friends, Clara, had been my roommate in college. When I reached out, she was overjoyed to reconnect. We spent hours reminiscing about the old days and laughing about how far we'd come. Clara quickly became my biggest cheerleader, encouraging me to dream bigger. "You've always been stronger than you gave yourself credit for," she told me over coffee one day. "Now you're finally living like it." A month after Linda's call, I was surprised to see Ethan waiting outside my apartment building. I hadn't spoken to him since our brief conversation, and I had no intention of starting now. But the look on his face, desperate and hollow, gave me pause. Against my better judgment, I agreed to hear him out. "Rachel," he began awkwardly, his eyes darting to the ground. "I don't know how to say this, but I need your help." I crossed my arms, keeping my expression neutral. "What kind of help?" He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I can't keep up with the bills. My mom sold the house, but it wasn't enough. Monica's been no help, and I thought maybe we could figure something out together." I raised an eyebrow. "Together?" "Ethan, there is no together anymore. You and your family made sure of that." "I know," he said quickly. "I know we messed up. But No, Ethan." I interrupted firmly. "You didn't just mess up. You all made a conscious decision to push me out of the house I was paying for, to belittle me, and to treat me like an outsider. Now you want me to swoop in and save the day? That's not going to happen." His shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I should have stood up for you." I nodded, acknowledging his apology, but refusing to let it sway me. "I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't change anything. I've moved on, Ethan. You should too." After that encounter, I didn't hear from Ethan or his family again. The silence was a blessing. I continued to thrive in my new life, pouring my energy into my work and personal growth. I even started painting again, a hobby I had abandoned during my marriage. It was therapeutic, a way to express everything I had been holding inside for so long. One day, Clara suggested I host an art exhibit featuring my work. At first, I laughed at the idea. Me? An artist? But the more I thought about it, the more it excited me. With her help, I organized a small showcase at a local gallery. The turnout was incredible, and I even sold a few pieces. It was a reminder that life after hardship could be not only fulfilling but joyful. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Linda had moved in with Monica, who is now struggling financially after a failed business venture. Ethan had taken on multiple jobs to make ends meet, but it was clear their lifestyle was nothing like it had been when I was footing the bills. While part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction, I mostly felt pity. They had created their own downfall through selfishness and pride. As for me, I was thriving. My business was expanding, my art was gaining recognition, and I had built a circle of supportive friends who lifted me up rather than tore me down. I had even started dating again, cautiously, but with a newfound confidence. One afternoon, as I was leaving my favorite coffee shop, I ran into Linda. She looked older, more frail than I remembered. For a moment, I considered walking away, but something in her eyes stopped me. "Rachel," she said softly, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I nodded. "I hope you've learned something from all of this, Linda." "I have," she admitted. "I just wish it didn't take losing everything to realize how wrong I was." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, I saw her as a person rather than an adversary. While I wasn't ready to forgive her completely, I wished her well and walked away, feeling lighter than ever. As I drove back to my apartment, I thought about how far I had come. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had reclaimed my power, my happiness, and my future. And I wasn't looking back.